So guys, France isn't cheap, but it can definitely be affordable. In this section, we're going to sit down with Jade Milin, our senior paralegal, and we're going to discuss the cost of day-to-day living, the affordability of rental in Paris, and just open your eyes to the finances and the costs of kind of daily life in general, and what retiring in Paris actually could look like financially for you guys. So without any further ado, let's go and chat about it.
So what to expect in France in terms of costs and the daily life basis?
So I guess, it all depends where you're living, right? If you're in the centre of Paris or Saint-Tropez, Nice, you might be more you might, depending on the time of the year as well, I would suggest. But cost of daily life, I think, you tell me your experience in the US, but I think on average it's like 20 to 30% cheaper overall. Certain things are like, other than like gas or fuel, as we would call it, I think that's the only thing that you would have that's considerably cheaper in the US. So everything else is really going to be a breath of fresh air, notably like insurance. Insurance is so much cheaper in France.
Yeah.
Like home contents insurance. And I have clients that call me and say, is there not a mistake, right? It's like, it's only 200 euros to insure my house. But I think for everyday life, pretty much everything is going to be a lot better value and around 20 to 30% cheaper. That's what clients have fed back to me. Obviously, the current situation at the time of recording this, the dollar has dropped quite considerably. So it's affecting, obviously, people on currency exchange. And that's why it's quite prudent to do maybe quite big chunks of exchange when the dollar is good and hold that money in euros so that you can, usually, let's be optimistic, it always levels itself back out.
It does, yeah.
So, yeah, we hope for that for people that haven't moved their funds. But generally speaking, it's a lot cheaper to live in France, especially than if you move into rural parts of France.
Okay. So we talked about going to the doctor in France versus going to the doctor in the UK. What to expect considering their healthcare cost in general?
So healthcare costs are very cheap compared to countries like the US. In terms of how that's set up, you have to come in. If you're coming from Australia, USA, Canada, let's say, you have to come in with a private medical coverage.
Yeah.
And then you've got to check out what that private medical coverage will do and what that will cover.
Yeah.
So usually speaking, I think going to the doctors in France is like a one-off fee of 20 to 35 euros. That's just to see your general practitioner that then refers you either to some prescription drugs or to another specialist. So whilst you're not in the French system, you might be asked to pay for those fees. But you might also be covered by your medical policy until you enter the French system. So overall, very cheap compared to any of our English-speaking countries. There are solutions in the interim before you integrate the French system.
Okay.
And there are agreements on healthcare between all of these countries.
Good to know.
So basically, you're not just on a free ride.
Yeah.
And your worldwide income will be subject to some contributions, which are capped to around 21 to 23,000 euros a year for very high earners. But things like your pension and your social income are then not taxable. They're part of the agreement that France has with most of the English-speaking countries. So overall, it's going to be a pretty great cost transition. Even if you were like a super high, lucky enough to be a super high earner, you'll still pay a lot less than what you did in the US, for instance.
To know.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
and there's obviously extra policies that you can take out, etc. But I don't know about you, Chad, but France is like every Western kind of country suffering an aging population and maybe a lack of doctors. But I don't think there are any really medical black zones or areas, where there's just no
doctors. Yeah.
No doctors. I hear this term, but I actually, my experiences in super rural areas, actually probably the service is better. So
they take more the time, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, the experience I've had, both of my children born in France, so the service that we received was exceptional. I mean, it's kind of amazing. I think there's a funny story as well. The guy that put me to the gynecologist that actually helped my mum deliver me in France did the same for my two kids. So he was the last ones, but and also Ryan that works in our company. So we got a lot to. We'll shout out to Dr. Patrick Wren. Thank you guys, because he was on the very far end of it. He said, "No, we can't do any more now." So I must have caught him at the very beginning of his career and at the very end. But yeah, in rural areas, there's a nice continuity usually, and I think just generally speaking, general practitioners are really good, but the setups are different, right? I think this is sometimes I heard in a podcast of one of our clients, not on a podcast, but on one of their YouTubes, that they found it a bit weird, the way that you go into sometimes a house, like it's like the doctor's office is like in a residential area. But don't think it's not great service. It's just that quite often they have like a home life balance, and like maybe your dentist is going to actually.
My dad used to live upstairs as well, so he's a dentist.
Was your dad a dentist? Yeah. So,
like he still is. Yeah,
you're still
Yeah, he still is.
It still is. So, well, that's often the case, right? And it's not because it's not high quality or not highly trained. It's just that's just the culture.
Yeah. That's just depends where you are, yeah.
But that's very personal and very, nice in a way, as long as you get on with them. But there's loads of choice, and there's loads of applications like Dr. Lieb, where you can track all of your.
You have so many choices on those apps.
Yeah, it's actually pretty progressive on that point. A quick word about money transfer. Now we're talking about buying houses, how your cost of living is going to work in France, setting up bank accounts. One alternative that we really recommend to all of our clients, and we use it for our own business, is Wise. Wise is essentially a technology solution provider to exchange currency. But not just that. It also allows you to hold currencies. It allows you to have a debit card that works all over the world, and pretty much allows you to set up all of the direct debits that you'll need when you're moving to France. So it's a great alternative to opening a French bank account, and it's a lot easier. If you go in the description link below, you'll find your link, which will give you some real advantages with our special relationship that French Connections has with Wise. So don't miss the opportunity to open up your free account. Go in the description box today.
Okay, talking about cost, is it better to import my car in France or to buy a car in France, you think?
So bringing your car to France. Interestingly, we've gone from obviously healthcare to vehicles, but these are the questions that you guys are bringing in. So thank you for that. We actually built this business on vehicle importation, really. My father restored classic cars and restored them in France. So didn't really bother learning too much French. I got on the scene of registering them very early on. And that's kind of how we made this a scalable business, because we built technology around the art of doing so. Ironically, it's not that different to bring a vehicle in as it is a human being. It's like the logic of paperwork is similar. But coming back to that question, well, one, you can get a quote on our website. Secondly, the cost of actually physically moving the car isn't that expensive.
Okay.
You're probably only looking at $2,500 from the US, from New York to somewhere like Calais or Marseille. There's great services. There are great services, to towards the sort of door-to-door transport. What you've got to be mindful of is if the car is not a classic car, i.e. if it's not over 30 years old, it becomes very difficult if the car wasn't built for Europe.
Yeah, you mean
And-
like the wheel on the...
Well, no, not necessarily the side of the roads. It's actually the fact that the car was actually manufactured for the American market and therefore does not have a certificat de conformité européenne, COC or SOC, as we refer to it. And that can bring so many problems if you don't have that. So always check with your manufacturer first. Can it have a COC? If it can't, probably it's going to be easier to buy something locally. If it's a classic car, good news for Americans as well is classic cars are usually always more valuable in France. So if I was talking to a gentleman yesterday that's looking to get a Jaguar E-Type Series 2 from California to France, and he was planning on selling it in California, I actually said, look, bring it to France, you'll sell it for 20-30% more money. So
more interesting.
Yeah. To answer that question, it depends. Modern cars, I would say no, unless you've got a certificate of conformity. We can help. We're in 2025. Everything is possible, but
it is.
It's a long process if you don't really love the vehicle. And I guess there is a mention of like we in France are not so attached to everyday cars, right? So the Renault, the Peugeot, the Citroën is probably a better car to drive there locally because you can service it as well. So being a bit of a British enthusiast, I've got to drive an hour to take my Land Rover to get it serviced in the rural parts. So yeah, it's probably worth. And maybe you integrate better if you're driving a Renault. I don't know.
Probably. So what about US Social Security when you are in France or abroad?
Not taxable, but a good question, because I'm actually going to take my phone out, guys, because we just received an email this morning. Super interesting. There's a new law that's coming out in the US, which potentially means that Social Security is not going to be taxable. So this has come from the Social Security Administration of the US this morning. And Social Security applauds passage of legislation providing historic tax relief for seniors. So essentially, you wouldn't be taxed in the US. And the question from this client, and if Joanne is watching, thank you for emailing us. This was sent to myself and our chartered accountant. And her question was, it would be interesting to see if it affects Americans living in France, that now it's not going to be taxed in the US. Would it be then taxed in France? And I can go live to you guys and go to Gero, who's our French chartered accountant, and my good friend who you'll see on a new YouTube channel where we're filming in the Alps actually next week. That it's a great idea, and thanks for sharing. The fact is there's a low or zero taxation does not change anything to the tax treaty. It would remain taxable in the US with a tax credit in France equal to the French taxes. So thus, it would just mean less taxes for US retirees, whether they live in France or not.
That's good news.
Good news, right? Really good news. So yeah, that was a live question that came through this morning, and hopefully that's relevant to those you guys asking this question and watching. So generally speaking, the US tax treaty works really well. The only thing you got to look carefully into is like IRA investments types or anything to do with trading stocks, which could be taxable in France and not taxable in the US.
So as a foreign retiree in France, is it easy, you think, to get a mortgage or...
So lots of people will tell you it's not possible. There is an age thing, right? There's an insurance relative, but we do work with within our team of people. We actually have mortgage brokerage services, and we are probably the only people to be able to take in consideration investments held in the US. So what we do with that is we will help do a feasibility study on your income and your sources. Of course, historically, money in a 401k is going to be a lot better than any placements that you have in France. So the logic would be keep your money in a 401 And as long as the US dollar doesn't completely crash, you're going to have a better deal overall over a period of 10 odd years. Plus, you guys in the US have a completely different idea of investment and kind of, it's just so different. So we do have a feasibility study, and then we can act as a broker if you want to, for even people that are retired, and we can actually leverage their investments in the US. Difficulty is, though, that only really works for the purchase of a house that's finished.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking at renovating, it's very difficult. Well, it's pretty much impossible to use that as leverage on the renovation costs. So it only really works for somebody that's buying a finished property.
So talking about retirement and circling back to the first question about living cost in France, do you think what a realistic budget for somebody retiring in Paris would be? Like, is it way more expensive than the rest of France, or what to expect in terms of budget?
Hey, good question. I think the difficulty with Paris is actually finding somewhere more than the cost. I think the average price for 50 square meters is going to be around 1,200, starting from 1,200 euros per month. I would suggest probably a budget of minimum of 2,500 euros really is realistic. And I think the average cost of living in Paris would be around 2,000 to 3,000 euros a month. So it is, I would suggest, probably 30 to 40% more expensive than rural parts of France, at least, and maybe more than that. But the challenge is always finding something that is suitable for your needs, no matter where that is, right? But yeah, budget-wise, compared to the US, I think that's probably cheaper still than living in the equivalent kind of suburb areas, etc. Plus, don't forget you're going to save on your medical. Eventually, you're going to save on your everyday life. And although you're living in Paris, we've got, of course, Rungis and the fresh food and market stalls and all of this quality of life that's still in central cities, and of course the activities are probably.
So is it hard to find a place in Paris? Can you help with that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, we can help with it, but it's still challenging. And we always go down the routes of first probably getting you to visit properties so you can see them yourself. I think more than ever in Paris.
Okay.
And there is a bit of a kind of mafia of rentals. I mean, like in any big city, I'm sure.
True.
What was it? You're in New York, so it's probably not that different. So but definitely budget-wise, if you counted around from 1,300 euros. But again, that's all dependent on the area where you want to be, and there's many. As I've learned to know Paris over the years, ironically, of the 20 odd years that I lived and grew up in France, I'd only been to Paris once for the Rugby World Cup.
Okay.
As an adult, I used to work there, and very similar to many big cities in the world, every arrondissement feels like a different place.
Yeah, it does.
So it's still finding the right place for you that counts.
Okay.
And then there's only so many properties. So if you found this episode useful and you've liked the content, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you're feeling really generous, go and share it with somebody that you think would like to watch this. Also, as usual, if you want to book a call with us, you can go in the description links below, and you can schedule a call at your convenience to talk about your relocation. We look forward to making this move to France easy for you.